I'm sure longtime fans of The Walking Dead have heard of The Walking Dead Survival Instinct, but just in case if you haven't, Survival Instinct came out on March 19th, 2013, so very much in The Walking Dead's heyday, or even a little before. The game actually came out in the tail end of Season 3. So The Walking Dead and Activision joined forces to create a prequel video game about Daryl and Merle Dixon. I just kind of want to get this aside before anyone says anything. As a video game, this game is not very good. The mechanics of it are very wonky, and it feels like you're running underwater the whole time. It's really not a very good video game, but the story that the game tells is pretty fun. It's a very linear story. There's not a lot of free range, really. Kind of here and there, but generally you got to go fetch something and come back, and it's also very basic, but the core of the story that it's telling, I personally find it kind of interesting. But again, as a video game itself, it truly is not very good. Even for standards in 2013, this is not one of the best first-person shooters. But getting back to the story of Survival Instinct, the game kicks off with actually you, the player, playing as Will Dixon. If you don't know that name right off the top of your head, well, that is actually Merle and Daryl's dad. So the game pretty much starts off with him out in the wilderness getting deboweled by a walker. And again, this game's a first-person perspective, so you see, well, Will Dixon pretty much bleeding out everywhere. And then, as you're bleeding out, you see his half-brother, Jess, come over and put him down. And that's after Daryl struggles putting his dad down. Just think of the scene, it's very similar to when Daryl puts down Dell. It's pretty much right from that. I mean, it's pretty dang similar. But in the midst of all that, Daryl's uncle, Jess, actually gets bit. But at that time, Daryl and the others don't really know what's going on, how stuff is transmitted, because Daryl, his dad, and his uncle were all up in the mountains, the hills, kind of just biding their time, avoiding everyone, while Merle, shocker, he was actually in jail during this whole time. So when Daryl and his dad and uncle come down to town to get supplies, they kind of run into the world that's kind of happened. So then they're quickly adapting, and they don't know, if you get bit, you're going to die. So Uncle Jess gets bit, and eventually he does turn, and Daryl has to put him down. But the majority of the game is Daryl going on fetch quests for random people he finds. But the main driving force of the story is Daryl finding Merle. And then once he does find Merle, them trying to find shelter or safety, because of course Merle wants revenge on the biker gang that kind of turned on him. But nonetheless, the Dixon brothers save some people, kill a lot of walkers, and they were about to take off with another group, but Merle actually pulls Daryl away because he saw that the pilot or someone else on the helicopter was bit, and Merle was pretty much just like, you're not going, baby brother. We ain't going at all. So then they take off to their own fate, whatever happens to those people, and then after that, it's safe to infer a day, a week, a few days, what have you. Eventually, Daryl and Merle meet the Atlanta group and survive for a little bit longer, and then boom, that's when The Walking Dead starts, and that's when Rick shows up and so forth. So it is a fun little prequel to Daryl and Merle, I have to say. Again, the gaming part of it isn't too good, but the story part of it, it's pretty interesting. And something that was advertised early on in 2013 about the game was that this game was canon to the Walking Dead universe and The Walking Dead, which I thought was pretty compelling, especially as a huge Walking Dead fan back then, same as I am today. But I was like, wow, this game is actually canon, so this is a true prequel to Daryl and Merle. This is what they did after the apocalypse started, of course, but, like the few weeks before Rick shows up at the Atlanta camp, this is what Daryl and Merle were kind of up to. So I started thinking, is this game still canon today in the Walking Dead universe? And as far as I can tell, everything I've looked up, Wikipedia, Walking Dead fandom, other various websites, The Walking Dead Survival Instinct is still canon today. So yeah, here in 2022, almost 2023, almost 10 years later after the game came out, Survival Instinct, aka the Daryl Dixon prequel game, is still canon to the Walking Dead universe. And I find that quite cool. So just in case if you didn't know that, now you do. This is truly the prequel to Daryl and Merle. And I do think it's pretty cool that we get to, in a way, meet Daryl and Merle's dad. I would have liked if that was kind of fleshed out a little bit more. That'd been really cool to see. Because already, even at this point when the game came out, we had a lot of great Merle and Daryl scenes. And of course, we get a few more of those throughout this game. But
what do you see?
What do you think I see? It's a fucking hospital.
it would have been kind of cool to see a little bit more of their dad, because just the tidbits we hear of how bad of a dad, Daryl's dad was throughout the run of the show, it would have been interesting to at least kind of meet the man in some way or another. But I get why they didn't do it at the same time. People probably have a lot of big expectations over that, and they didn't want to fail on that front. But regardless, we do get to meet him in a way, even though he's getting, deboweled by a walker. And we do get to learn his name, and that is Will, of course. And we do meet Daryl's uncle. I think that's kind of cool too. But we also do get a little Easter egg of Andrea and Amy. Daryl actually meets their parents and scavenges some supplies for them. We don't actually see Andrea and Amy, but they do get mentioned, and I do think that is a pretty cool little nod to what's to come in the show, of course. But for being a pretty bad video game, this is a pretty interesting story, at least in my opinion. I know the game overall really flopped, and it was not good when it comes to any critical scores when it comes to the gaming side of it. And I know people even complained about the story a little bit, you know, that it was too linear, it's very boring, very basic, and I understand those complaints and criticisms. At the core of it, when you can kind of strip away all the excess fat of it, I do find it interesting to see what Merle and Daryl were up to at the beginning of the apocalypse. I do think The Walking Dead and Activision were kind of hoping that this was the beginning of a lot of survival instinct type games, because just think about it, they could have done a lot of different characters, have little prequels like this, you know, little kind of quick single player first person shooter games of Andrea at the start of the apocalypse. Maybe we get a Shane and Lori and Carl at the very beginning of the apocalypse. Maybe we could see Tyrese's journey to the prison from the very beginning of the apocalypse. There's just so many characters throughout the Walking Dead's run. Just say in the first 5 seasons, they could have done little prequel video games with, and it would have been pretty cool to see. But what are you going to do? The game flopped and it wasn't too popular. And again, I totally get it. The gameplay mechanics of it are not very good. It is a pretty bad game when it comes to the video game side. But again, the story is a lot of fun. I don't think it's nowhere near the Telltale games. I know a lot of people hold those games near and dear to their heart, and those are fun. But that's just pretty much you walking through a story, where here at least you get to actually play. You know, you actually get to shoot walkers and knife walkers, scavenge. Like, that part of it is a lot of fun. It just needed a little bit more tightening up and a little bit more love put on it when it comes to the gameplay. In my perfect world, they would have used like the Call of Duty engine at the time to make this game, and it would have been really good, because obviously Call of Duty is like the standard of first person shooters, especially back in 2013. They could have made a really cool Walking Dead video game that's first person. But whatever, I bet this was a super on the cheap. It obviously was, because if you play it, again, it feels like you're walking underwater. It's no doubt made on a budget. I'll just leave it at that. But this is a video game that I've always kind of wanted to cover in some way or another, but I didn't know how I wanted to cover it. And I thought this was the perfect way to do it. Kind of talk about the game, talk about the story a little bit, and of course mention that the gameplay isn't too great. But I mainly wanted to touch on that the story that is told in this game is canon to the Walking Dead universe. And I find that quite interesting. Still to this day, it is. They didn't take it away. They didn't retcon it. This is the canon story to Merle Dixon and Daryl Dixon at the start of the apocalypse in The Walking Dead, and I just find that quite cool. The Walking Dead has also had some other video game flops throughout the years, and I would like them to at least try again sometime or another. I think that'd be really cool to see. I think they were onto something here with the survival instinct, but again, it needed a lot more love when it comes to the video game aspect of it. The gameplay mechanics weren't too good. Again, throw the Call of Duty engine on that thing for The Walking Dead, and I think that'd been quite the fun game. But I would like to see The Walking Dead take another risk like this sometime. That'd be a lot of fun. I mean, just think of the possibilities of all the characters that we've met over the last 11 seasons and all the cool stories that you could tell just in prequel form. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, I know we got a Negan prequel, but think of just Negan at the start of him making the sanctuary. An Aaron video game even, him just trying to find people and out scavenging for Alexandria. You know, there's just so many possibilities, so many different characters. Again, I would lean more towards the original characters of like the first 3 seasons, 4 seasons, somewhere in there. It's sad that the game flopped, but the main story of this game I do find cool and important to The Walking Dead, because again, this is the prequel story of Merle and Daryl Dixon, and I do find that quite fun, regardless if the game isn't that great to play. So with all that said, did you play Survival Instinct back in 2013? Let me know your thoughts down below, and while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.